Women in design. So this is a really big topic. Terrence talked a little bit about it. And the reason I crossed out design, I'll get into in a sec. But first off, let's watch a video. How do I click this? Sorry, I'm being really complicated. I know you guys all have to go to the bathroom. It's okay. 10 minutes. I'll be good.
What do I tell my daughter? Do I tell her that her grandpa's worth more than her grandma? That her dad is worth more than her mom? Do I tell her that despite her education, her drive, her skills, her intelligence, she will automatically be valued as less than every man she ever meets? Or maybe I'll be able to tell her something different.
So many things to unpack.
And press the button on it. Yeah, right here.
Hello? Cool. So many things to unpack there. First off, what is wrong with that ad? Right? Did you think I was going to say that? Probably not. We'll get into that in a little bit. Cool. We'll get into that in a little bit. But it really like tugs at your heartstrings, doesn't it? And that's exactly what it was trying to do, marketing. Marketing is the bane sometimes of our existence, but they're also really helpful, which is great. So, love, hate. Yeah, I'm Amy. Thanks, Russ, for that really fantastic intro. I do work at Axiom Zen. I'm a product designer there, and we're really cool. So, cool. 4 weeks ago, I get an email from Russell, and I'm like, yeah, I can do a couple of different talks. You know, I can talk about this, talk about that. And he's like, by the way, Amy's talking about women in design. I'm like, oh, okay. Cool. I didn't really know that much about it. I didn't know much about feminism. I didn't know too much about what this really meant. And I talked to a lot of people. So what quickly became women in design just became women, women in. So what does that really mean? Terrence talked a lot about diversity, and I really want to unpack a lot of things, a lot of misconceptions, a lot of preconceived ideas, unconscious biases to do with women in tech and women in design. I asked a really good friend and a colleague of mine, Cassidy, about why she knows a little bit more about women in tech and what she did to bypass that. And what she said was, I'm a woman in tech, so there's no reason I shouldn't know a little bit more about it. And that's totally true. And it's totally fair that a lot of us might not know too much about it. We're really busy. There's a lot of school, work, family, friends. But I think hopefully after today, you come away with something a little bit more. So over the last 4-ish weeks, I had a ton of interviews, as any good designer, empathy, get to know people, read a ton of articles, stats, looked at a bunch of videos, read some books, summaries, because books are really long, so summaries are great. So yeah, at the end of the day, women design became women. And the thing that really changed for me is perceptions, realizations, realities. And really answering this question, why are we still talking about feminist issues? And here we don't, in Vancouver especially, we don't really understand, feel it so much. And as I was talking to all these people, I soon came to realize that there were really two types of people that I was talking to. One in Camp 1, people who don't know too much about feminism, and two, people who are actually more well-read on what that really means. So I'll talk a little bit about Camp 1 right now. And these people really are split up into two camps. One, people who are not really don't really see too much of a problem. I mean, I was kind of in this category. I've never felt I've never felt biased, pushed away because I was a woman. You know, I understood that as a woman, you know, there might be unconscious biases, so, you know, I was always kind of aware, but I never really read too much on it. A lot of men are in this category, to be fair. A lot of people in general, a lot of people here. And that's fair, right? We see stats like this. Women in the Senate are going up. There's more women CEOs. I mean, granted, they're still a little low, but they're going up. We see the first woman who could have been the president. We see Malala, who's also not just looking at women issues, but human issues. We see our own prime minister who, you know, because it's 2015, we have a 50-50 cabinet. But what the happy camper becomes when we see misogyny or when we see things happen to women is what I call the second group within Camp 1, which I call rage. And rage happens when we see these things. We see you know, stats. Obama said this stat, that women earn 79 cents to every dollar a man makes. We see this woman who gets catcalled for 10 hours. We see Trump in the States. And we get really angry and we get really ragey. And what I want to do is how we can combat that. Because rage is fine. Rage causes action. But anger is polarizing. And we see this a lot in social media, regular media. When we're polarized, we fight against each other. So what can we do about it? So this really brings me to Camp 2 and people who really care about feminist issues or women issues or equality gender issues. And what we try to do and what they say is they go beyond headlines and beyond those Audi ads. So back to the Audi ad itself. The reason why we should think about those things that are put out is that words that they use, like your mother will never make more than your father. You will automatically be perceived differently to every man you meet. This makes us combative and it makes us polarized, and we don't want to be polarized. So a couple things I want to talk about in terms of, you know, how we can combat you know, marketing and misconceptions is these three things. You know, one, the gender pay gap. So what does that really mean? Are we actually making 79 cents to the dollar? I want to talk a bit about language and how we can use language better within our workplaces, within kind of our everyday, and why diversity matters. So again, thanks Terrence for talking about diversity. Hopefully we can have a bit more specific goals. So the gender gap itself, super nuanced, way more complicated than we think. Thank you to Sarah Gliff, who works at Vox, because I didn't make these images, but they're really great. So first off, babies. Babies matter. Having children matters. I'm going to talk about the language between maternity leave, paternal leave in a sec when I talk about language. But if we just purely look at this graph, women who have MBAs, who have kids, the pay gap is actually really huge. And we can't deny this. And when we talk about equality, it's not necessarily about equality. It's about diversity and the differences between men and women, and the differences that the fact that a woman carries a baby, it impacts her. And that's just something to be aware of. Second thing I want to talk about in terms of the gender pay gap, I'll make this a little bigger, is in really specific businesses, the gender pay gap is really big, and the reason it exists is because if you work longer hours, say for example in business or sales, you will make more money. So if, for example, the woman wants to stay home and have her kid, you can't make that much money. Whereas if you look at tech and sciences, the pay gap is actually quite low. A really great example that Sarah brings up in her video on Vox is about pharmacists. And pharmacists, when it stopped becoming a self-profession, and like Walmart had pharmacists, and you know, like Shoppers, Drug Mart had pharmacists. Women could work at any time of the day, and because of that, it doesn't matter what time you work as long as you work. The gender pay gap is like super negligible. So what I'm saying is that the misconception, understand it, but also understand where it comes from. And anytime people talk about you know, various issues, just be really aware like where the statistics come from. So the thing that can really help in terms of you know, women in tech is diverse jobs with flexible hours and pay really matter to the type of job. So we're really lucky being in design. The ability to work from home is really amazing, and we want to keep encouraging companies and studios to allow people to have more and more flexible hours. And if you're not happy, it's okay to quit. Cool. So language. We need to think about how we speak. So first off, how to change the language that we use. This is a really great article. I can't remember her name who wrote it, but I have a link at the end, that talks about a job description. So if we look at this job description at the top, it says we are a dominant engineering firm that boasts many leading clients. And if you compare that to the one that's a little bit better, we're a community of engineers who have effective relationships, many satisfied clients, etc. Language matters so much to the perception of who you are as a company, who you are as a person, and how you're representing yourself out there. So when you are when you're working at a company, encourage the people that you work with that all the pieces of copy that you're putting out there really, really matters because it affects how people will perceive you. And the second thing I want to talk about again is maternity leave versus parental leave. So when I was first thinking about this topic, you know, I got a little ragey because I was like, oh, how do we fix maternity leave? In Canada, it's not too bad. In the States, it's super terrible. But it's not about fixing maternity leave or fixing women's issues. It's about understanding that we're diverse and that the issue is parental leave. How can we encourage both parents, if that opportunity exists, to both take time off and to take care of the kid? I mean, this is better for the kid. This is a lot of studies say that having both parents around is really good. So again, the words that we say matter because it affects how we think about particular topics. And the last thing I want to talk about is how do we support diversity? So here, I mean, it's really simple, right? Support our friends and our peers. We want to build trust through feedback and conversation. So what that really means is if I'm going into a job, I want to go into a meeting and be confident that my coworker is respecting my authority, my skills, and my values. So if you can't change what a client says to you, and you can't change what other people say to you, but you can affect what your peers say to you. So for example, if I'm going into this meeting and a client is not looking at me purely because of an unconscious bias, this person doesn't think that I might be the head designer, the lead designer on this project, and they turn to the man beside me. I want to be confident that the man beside me understands and trusts and respects me and will direct the attention towards me. So some things that you can say to combat this, if you are feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling unheard and you're feeling overlooked, tell them simply, right? I feel unheard when this. I feel overlooked when this. And I want to thank Christine, who's sitting over there, for giving me these quotes because she says it's also really good in a relationship to say these things. Because yeah, at the end of the day, equality isn't what we want. We want equity, we want diversity, and we want fairness. And that's it. I want to thank all the people that talked to me throughout this whole process. Here's a couple links. Hopefully we can get these slides up, and thanks so much.